Today I'm going to be unboxing a Unifi Dream Machine SE and getting it all set up and configured, ready to go into a shadow mode configuration. So what is Unifi shadow mode? According to the article on unifi.com or ui.com, shadow mode is gateway high availability. With shadow mode you can ensure high availability of your network gateway to minimise downtime and provide reliable failover mechanism in the face of an unexpected hardware failures. I'm not sure I would describe it as high availability myself, because it's not seamless failover. You have to disconnect the WAN port and other connections from your primary one if it fails and plug it into the secondary. Shadow mode is just shipping the configuration over every time there's a configuration changes made. So if you get an outage, it's out until you go and physically repatch those connections. It's not like you've got both devices plugged into the network just with their LAN port, and then you've got a WAN port plugged into each separate gateway, and if one fails you'd see the other one immediately. This isn't seamless failover. There are a few requirements as well. Cloud gateways must be the same model, so if you've got an older Dream Machine Pro and not the Dream Machine SE, you need to get one that matches. If you've got a Dream Machine Pro SE, you need another Dream Machine Pro SE. So it's not like you can buy a new Dream Machine Pro SE and retire your old one to become the shadow mode device. You've got to have two identical units. Second gateway must be in factory default state, which is what we need to do, is get the new one up to date to the same OS and network application version to allow the devices to communicate and become shadow mode, available on the second unit. And a couple of requirements on here as well. You've got to be super admin to do it. Both consoles must be running OS 3.2 or later, so your main one needs to be upgraded to OS 3.2. So yeah, there's a few other pieces of information on this about shadow mode as well. You can read at your leisure. So I'm going to get this unboxed, have a look at what it comes with and what the interfaces are, etc. So on the top of the box is the usual kit, which contains in this case an EU power lead. In the box shipped from the supplier is a UK power lead. There is the rack ears to be screwed onto the end, and I can't open this with one hand, so one moment. Using the magic of pausing the video recording. The usual cage nut rack kit from Unifi, so nuts, bolts, the screws for the rack ears, these, no idea, and rubber feet if you were going to use it on a desk, although I can't think of why you'd want to use it on a desk. So next up I'll get the router out of the box. These small screws here are actually for the hard drive mounting caddy. So when you pop your 3.5 inch or 2.5 inch hard drive in here, use these little screws to hold the drive down to the plate, and then that does your CCTV recording. So that's what those little screws are for. Unifi routers come in this nasty plastic based, not polystyrene, but foam. I wish they'd come wrapped in cardboard. And then underneath the nasty plastic foam stuff is like a plasticky type water resistant, I take it, vapor barrier type. It's definitely not fabric, but it's just keeping the unit from being scratched and stuff. Okay, so this is the front of the unit. Got the standard Unifi display here. Shows you when you're configuring it. Also gives you stats on what's connected up and down, etc. Moving along, got a hard drive bay for if you're using it as the DVR for CCTV. You've got bank of 8 network ports. Now all of the ports are PoE. The N2 ports here are PoE plus. So if you've got any devices that require higher power on a PoE, you need to connect them to these two. So you can connect, if you have the the U6 Pro access points, they're plugged to these two ports, because if you plug them into the other 6, there won't be enough power and the device performance will be limited. Next up, you've got a 2.5 gig WAN port to connect to your ONT or your whatever service you've got. Top one here is a 10 gig WAN port, and underneath you've got a 10 gig LAN port. So plenty of connectivity options here. The WAN ports can be set up to do failover, so if your 10 gig link fails, you fail over to 2.5. It can also be set to split your traffic, so if you have like I don't know, 2 gig broadband or whatever, 2 gig fibre plugged into this service, and you had a Starlink on here, you can say always stick 5% of my traffic out via the Starlink interface, so you're kind of always using it. That's a slider you can set. Also you've got your reset port down the bottom for factory resetting. On the side here is where you screw on the rack ears, on the right and on the left. And the last bit of the whistle stop tour on the back is that's where the power cable goes. And if we whoosh over this side, that's where you plug in the redundant power connector for the if you had the unified backup power supply module, you can just pop this cap off and then the cable stuff's in the back there. So that's it for the tour of the box. If you are looking at this video, chances are you know what this is anyway, so I won't dwell on this too long. Very first thing to do to get this working in shadow mode correctly is to get it updated. I've seen a couple of YouTube videos where people have set these up for shadow mode, only they kind of missed the point where you've got to get it updated before you even start, because the version of Unifi OS and the version of a network app that ships with them is out of date, and you need to get it to match your Unifi gateway address for your current gateway. So I'm just getting this powered on, and I'm going to get a laptop or a computer plugged into it to then carry on configuring it. So connectivity to get this fired up to start with. Red lead goes into my existing Unifi setup, and I'm going to plug this into the WAN port. Just going to use v4 IP addressing for now, just to get it to connect out to the internet to get the updates downloaded. So red, dirty internet, and I'm going to plug a blue lead from port 1 into my PC and rejoin this in a few moments from the desktop. So as I looked back at the laptop, it was doing an automatic console update as part of the setup process. It obviously did this just because it saw it could access the internet, and it just automatically downloaded the update to the Unifi OS console. So on my main Unifi, I run the early access release channel, and the OS is 3.212, which is the same version that is on the new one. But the interesting bit is going to be the network version. So the network version I'm running, if it lets me get down to the settings button, so I'm running 8.1.113 on my existing one, and the new one is 8.0.28. so what I need to do is move this over to the to be looking at the early access release channel. So let me switch over to the other machine. Hopefully I can just click this button. Look at that. So just switch back to the UDM-OS. What I'm going to do is click here to start the network update. It looks like that's going to bring it up to the same level, because there's no early access release channel at the moment for that. So the Unifi network application on the secondary is now up to date, and if we have a look you can see it's 8.1.113. so the next thing we need to do now is factory reset this unit. Now it's up to date, so it can be put into use as the secondary in shadow mode off the main one. So literally going to hit factory reset on this box and leave it reset. While it's resetting, the little display says resetting to factory defaults. Once it's reset, we'll see it coming up on the main router as available for setting up shadow mode. So as soon as that the secondary Unifi rebooted, it came up on my primary Unifi and said that a new UDM-SE has been detected, and I can set it straight to shadow mode. So if I'm just going to say no to that for now, because apparently you can do it later. So if I go and have a look on my my Unifi devices, I'm going to see where else it appears. So it appears under applications right at the top, and literally just hit the set to shadow mode button, and it's syncing. And if I get the camera on the phone, the display says it's configuring basically, and there's a few minutes left, and now it says it's running in shadow mode and it's in synchronization. So that really wasn't difficult at all. Next up, I need to mount it in the little cabinet upstairs. So I'm going to get the shadow mode router mounted up now in my little switch cupboard. That's my live and active Unifi Dream Machine SE, which I've literally got it. That's my 10 gig uplink to my ONT from my service provider. That's the 10 gig uplink into my my switch. My switch is a Unifi 48 port enterprise PoE switch. That gives me 48 ports at 2.5 gig and 4 ports at 10 gig. And these are batteries that run out all over the house and down to the workshop and out to the board house and other places that I've got equipment. So I'm going to drop out the aggregation 8-port aggregation switch because I'm not using that anymore, and I'll pop the new shadow mode switch in underneath. Cue the montage. Okay, so that's done. It's booting up and it's going to rejoin and start to become a shadow mode router again. So I'm going to hop downstairs and we'll take a look at the Unifi console to make sure it's still working. Then I'm going to do a failover and make sure it fails over to the secondary. Okay, so my rookie mistake here was I've connected the LAN ports together, whereas shadow mode is one port of a secondary to a LAN port on the primary. In fact, it doesn't actually matter if it's a LAN port on a primary. I could have plugged it into one of the switch ports and do exactly the same thing. But yeah, shadow mode router needs to plug from the WAN port into the LAN port on the primary for the synchronization to work. So what is interesting now is that I've moved the router upstairs, the shadow mode router, and plugged it in, but the device is showing offline. So it's probably because I've plugged it into a different port than I had before, but it's not happy. If I click on here, it's showing as online, and on the main screen here, it's showing us offline. So one thing I can tell here is that looking at the IP address here, it's on a 192.168.8.215. That was its address when it was plugged into my workbench down here. The port it's been plugged into on the UDM isn't on that VLAN. I think that's my guest. That's my guest VLAN. So what I'm just going to do is hop into the network and just pop this over to the guest VLAN and see if it magically springs back into life. So that might be a bit of a gotcha if you're moving it around on an initial setup, is to make sure it's always on the correct VLAN. So let's go back and have a quick look now. Has it finished reconfiguring that port yet? What we should also be able to see it as a device in the devices list. So let's have a look for it in the devices list. Nope, it's not showing up there either at the moment. Ah, no, it says, here we go, now it's in sync. So the problem I had was that when I did the initial setup for shadow mode, it was on the guest VLAN. When I moved it upstairs and plugged it in, I plugged it into the port on the UDM rather than going through my core switch, which was on a different VLAN. So there must be, when the main router configures itself for shadow mode, it must lock it to being on that specific IP address. So that's just one to watch out for. What I'm going to go and do now is fail over to the secondary. So I'll pick this up back upstairs. So it's time to simulate a failure. So out comes the power lead from the primary. So that's now dead. Shadow mode on the secondary unit is showing as syncing. In sync. And now it says it's ready to take over. So haven't moved anything over yet, so let's start doing that. Out comes the link lead. I need to pull out the caps because we're using the 10 gig Ethernet. So SFP plus cable, that cable needs to go in for the LAN. Tech SFP adapter for the WAN needs to go in here. And also swap over the drive trays for the cameras. And now we're going to do tap to proceed. Hasn't connected yet, or authenticated yet. Give it a few seconds. I'm going to go and pick this up down on the desktop actually, see where we are. So I wouldn't exactly describe this as a smooth process, because I'm still getting pings from the router, but it doesn't appear to have hopped straight over. Just trying to browse to the IP of the router directly. It's giving me certificate warnings. I'm guessing there's going to be an amount of time while it sorts itself out, but I really wouldn't describe this as a highly available switch over configuration, because if you're using a Cisco running VRRP or a checkpoint running VRRP, the other device would have just failed and it would have perhaps dropped a couple of pings, but it would have gone straight over. This isn't that. But it's not loading this page at all. Okay, so after a couple of minutes, when I try and browse back to the router, I get a 404 not found. So this isn't particularly good, is it? I'm going to go back up and see what the router's doing now. So this is still saying no IP address, and we're connected incorrectly, so I don't know what's going on here. I'm going to revert back since this has been failover, and we'll try it again. So I put everything back as it was and rebooted both of the devices. The secondary's come up as in shadow mode again, in sync, and the top one's come up as network. So I'm just going to go downstairs and just double check I can actually access the internet again, and then we'll try and fail it over again. I'm wondering if the first failover wasn't successful because this was showing as syncing before. So maybe it didn't have a complete copy of the configuration, which does show a bit of a vulnerability then. If you get a failure when it's syncing, you could end up with a basically a brick device and no way to fail over. So maybe that needs some attention in future firmware upgrades, but let's go and check downstairs and see what happens this time. So let's do a refresh and see if we get in. Yes, and we're showing us in sync again down here. So next job is to go and try and fail it over again. Right, ready to try another failure now. Right, out comes the WAN port. So it's ready to fail over, so let's drop that cable in. Drop my ONT connection in, and then tap to proceed. Just tap that 3 times and it doesn't. There we go. Getting the same thing again, no IP. Might need to give it a couple of minutes, or I wonder if it's not realising that I'm using the 10 gig connection and it's expecting to find a WAN port on a 2.5 gig. I wonder if I just move my cable, whether it will come up. But the 2.5 gig isn't configured with my details. It's telling me to plug the cable in, which I've done. Still saying no IP. And in the configuration, my internet connection isn't configured to use with 2.5 gig connection. I'm configured to use with 10 gig, so I don't think that's going to work at all. Plug in cable again now. No IP. So the whole point of shadow mode is that when you get a failure on your primary router, you should just be able to move everything over to the secondary one and carry on regardless. That doesn't look like it's possible, or even works at the moment. So would I recommend shadow mode on Unifi? No, I don't think so. So what are my conclusions from that? Well, I don't think shadow mode works properly. Evolution is not ready for prime time. I certainly wouldn't use it or be relying on it in an enterprise. I mean, I'm only using these at home. It's either fundamentally faulty or it's not intuitive enough to use. I've got a fair amount of networking experience and I've not managed to get a successful failover with it. So it's either missing some messages on that screen directing you what to do, or it's not working as directed. What I will do is I'll log a call with Unifi now and see what they say. I'm going to post this video prior to logging the call, so I can refer them to this or show what I've done, and I'll update later if we manage to get an answer to this.